Peace and welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Faraji Muhammad. Thank you so much for being a part of the conversation. Folks, we got a lot to talk about. We're going to be checking in with our big brother, Dr. Gerald Horne, to give us today's Horne Report as we talk about the latest that came out of Supreme Court with that leak of Roe v. Wade. We're also going to talk about the January 6th committee and talk about the latest developments in the Ukraine-Russian war. So we'll have that conversation. Also, I'm going to be checking in with a father-daughter duo who's making dollar and cents, talking about NORYAN fragrance makers. We're going to talk about that. And later on, we discuss what's happening in the state of Florida and how Florida is fighting history with their latest efforts to exclude advanced placement classes of African-American studies. And you know who is led by Governor DeSantis. We're going to be checking in with Brother Michael and Hotep to have that conversation. So stay locked in, folks. We got a lot to talk about. Stay tuned. It's all happening on today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. Folks, welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Faraji Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Folks, I am so happy because my big brother is joining us once again. He serves as the Moores Professor of African American Studies from the University of Houston and down in Texas. And we're always happy to have him on the show to bring us the latest in both news and world events and domestically. So now it's time for us to check in with the Horne Report with Dr. Gerald Horne. All right, peace, Dr. Horne. How are you this afternoon, sir?
Well, it's all good. How about you?
I'm good. All right, Doc. Let's start off with the latest that has actually came out of Washington, D.C. with the Supreme Court situation. They just put it out there on the wire, Dr. Horne, just less than 30 minutes ago. And I had to include, I said, wait a minute, I got to talk to Dr. Horne about this one. They have essentially announced that they still cannot identify, Doc, who is responsible for that very historic leak of the Roe v. Wade decision, the decision that was made last summer that got the whole country in an uproar, and it really probably played against to the GOP's efforts in the national election in November. But they have not identified who was responsible for that leak. What's your take on this, Dr. Horne, and what does this say about future decisions, major decisions coming down the road from the Supreme Court?
Well, this was not the first time that a Supreme Court opinion was leaked prematurely. It happened almost a half century ago when the original Roe v. Wade decision was published or was put out by the U.S. Supreme Court. But what was curious about the leaking that took place in 2022 is that the initial suspicion was focused upon some of the conservative justices, speaking of Samuel Alito and his clerks, because it was felt that other conservative justices, for example, Justice Kavanaugh, were basically wobbly and swaying and might not want to sign on to the final decision. Because keep in mind, what was leaked was the preliminary opinion. In any case, as you just reported, the Supreme Court could not find who was the leakers. It doesn't surprise me, since it's, as I suggested, the most logical leaker was Justice Alito and his clerks. But I think that the wider story on the Supreme Court is how the personal relationships seem to be breaking down between and amongst the justices. Recall that during the time of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg and her conservative counterpart, Antonin Scalia, they were actually quite friendly. They were both opera fans. They shared jokes on the bench. But now there seems to be quite a bit of venom on the court. And I think in some ways it reflects the polarization in the United States of America right now, with many who are opposed to Republicans seeing them as engaged in a cover-up of insurrectionists and white supremacists and neo-Nazis, and the Republicans returning the fire in kind.
There we go. We're looking at a situation there, Doc, where you have this like personal tension that is spilling over into the professional spaces, and the spilling over in the professional space, but then also it speaks to a larger issue of what's going on within the parties of these individuals. So it's like one thing is leading to another thing. And if since they cannot identify, and this is what, January, this leak happened in June. So, we're a few months shy of it being a year since the leak happened. Since they could not identify who's responsible, what happens next at this point?
I assume the file will be buried. That is to say that this is the end of the story. However, I suspect that an enterprising journalist or two will pick up this story because it's too important to bury and to set aside. However, I'm not sure if that will turn up anything, quite frankly.
Well, and that's interesting. Here's what NBC reported here, Doc, and I wanted to get your take on this because this is another part of the problem. According to NBC, they reported this was based upon the report that the court put out, suggested the court was not watertight, with some employees admitting they had talked to spouses about the draft opinion and how the justice had voted. Supreme Court Marshal Gail Curley, who was in the charge of the investigation, said that 97 court employees were interviewed and all denied being the leaker. She said it was unlikely the court's information tech systems were compromised. The report made no mention of whether the 9 justices were questioned. So you have a whole bunch of people who knew that this vote was going to come down, or there was a draft of this vote, and they talked to their spouses. So does that open the door for some sort of, I don't know, NDA confidentiality agreement that employees may have to sign when it comes to this type of these matters? Because if they're talking to, if you're talking to your significant other, things can go left very, very quickly. And this was not a small decision. This just wasn't some small state case. This was a historic decision. So yes, those 97 employees that were interviewed, somebody could have certainly been lying.
Well, it's curious that apparently none of the justices were questioned because, as I suggested beforehand, a conservative justice such as Justice Alito was the likely leaker. Speaking of conservative justices, I should also mention Clarence Thomas, the only Black male member of the High Court. Recall that his spouse, Jenny Thomas, is a well-known and in fact celebrated right-wing political activist. The January 6th committee wanted to interrogate her about her possible and potential role in that insurrection in 2021. And so if that enterprising journalist decides to investigate further, they may want to start by investigating the investigator, because you mentioned this person who supposedly conducted the investigation, talking to 97 people, but not the justices themselves. That seems as if it's an inadequate investigation and something worthy of journalistic enterprise.
Right. So I would think that would be the first person that you talk to. I would talk to Clarence Thomas first. That's just me, Doc. I'll just go on a hunch. Like, let me talk to Justice Thomas real quick to see if he knew anything about this leak. So now that the courts are in this position, what does this do to the trust? Because we already know that the Supreme Court is conservative. We already know that it has its political affiliations right now with the GOP. But in terms of the American people trusting the High Court, Because at one time, I remember years ago, Doc, when I was in school, the Supreme Court was the law of the land. Like when they interpreted the law, when they made decisions, that was that. You know what I mean? And I had no understanding of bias. I had no sense of conservative and liberal. It was just like, oh, you're on the Supreme Court. That's the highest law in the land. But at this point, we know that it is partisan driven. So what does that do to the trust that the American people have about this very, very important institution of our democratic system?
Well, you need look no further than recent remarks of the justices themselves. Justice Elena Kagan, appointed by President Obama, has suggested that the Supreme Court is increasingly being viewed as politicians in black robes and therefore are losing the respect of a good deal of the U.S. populace. The aforementioned Justice Thomas has complained that in the good old days, from his point of view, the Supreme Court was like a family. But now he says that kind of familiarity, that kind of friendliness has disappeared, leading to venomous ties and relations between and amongst the justices. Obviously, this will leak into the body politic, particularly when you have these controversial decisions, such as the overthrow of Roe versus Wade as represented in the Dobbs case of about 6 or 7 months ago. And you can expect further inflamed attitudes when, as expected, the Supreme Court in the next few months decides to overthrow affirmative action, as represented in cases involving Harvard University and the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, which will be a signal blow to Black people in particular, but not Black people exclusively.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. We got to take a quick pause. But Doc, I can only imagine how this is going to continue to play out. I know that both sides are going to make this a very, very hot button political topic in the next couple of days. And I think that, to your point, it's going to open up the door for a lot of us in this country to really take a look at the Supreme Court. It may, and I'm hoping this may be the case, Dr. Horn, that it may force us to take another look at how we appoint the justices. That there may need to be an independent counsel outside of the president or another group of folks, a bipartisan situation. So that way it doesn't become so partisan driven that when a situation like this comes up, then people are pointing fingers at each other, only adding to the divide. So I'm hoping that something good will come out of this. We got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, folks, we're going to continue our conversation with Dr. Gerald Horn. We're going to bring you up to date on Ukraine. We're going to talk about the January 6th committee and their latest reports against social media and so much more. Stay with us. It's The Culture right here on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Your money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We're still checked in with our big brother, Dr. Gerald Horne, as he gives us this week's Horne Report, talking about both international and domestic issues. And I want to bring Dr. Horne back into the frame here. Dr. Horne, the other big story coming out of Washington, D.C. is the January 6th committee and their latest report, which is a condemnation of the role that social media platforms have played in the January 6th attack on storming of the Capitol. The Washington Post reported that the House January 6th committee investigators, they found, but not ultimately did they publish this report, but they found that mountains of evidence demonstrating that social media companies provided megaphones for right-wing extremists ahead of the Capitol insurrection and refused to enforce their own content moderation policies out of fear of conservative backlash. They bent their rules to avoid penalizing conservatives. This is something. Now, here's my take on this, Dr. Horne, and you tell me if I'm, on the right track here. I think that now that we know the power, the power, and more importantly, the influence that social media has, I think that we should have a very serious conversation in this country about regulating social media to some degree, because it seems like it has become this quasi state, and I'm not sure if it's. I mean, yes, we can regard it as media, but more importantly, it's kind of running by its own rules, and it's not showing some level of accountability. What does this report say to you? What does this latest finding from the January 6th committee mean to you, Doc?
Well, what it says is something that many of us suspected all along. Recall that just a few weeks ago, it was reported that Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser suggested that the lethargy with which the authorities, particularly the military, the National Guard, and the police, approached Capitol Hill on January 6, 2021, was because they saw many of these insurrectionists and rioters as their brothers and sisters. They saw them as comrades under the skin. I think you can say something similar with regard to social media and why they did not crack down on these rioters and insurrectionists. They saw them as comrades. And we see that further with the recent purchase of Twitter by the man born in apartheid South Africa, speaking of billionaire Elon Musk. Since his arrival on the scene at headquarters in San Francisco, Twitter has descended into being a kind of a cesspool of racism, bigotry, white supremacist nonsense, and all the rest. So certainly there needs to be an entirely different approach, as you suggest, to social media, Twitter not least. But the problem right now is, as we already know, that the Freedom Caucus in the House of Representatives has a stranglehold over that majority in the People's House, as it's often called. And from their point of view, they say the problem is that social media cracks down too much on the right wing. And this is part of this ploy that the right wing oftentimes pull. You see it in December 2022, when once again you had Fox News braying and prating about the supposed war on Christmas, which is obviously nonsense. But they portray themselves as being the victims, and then that allows them to strike back with a vengeance against the rest of us.
Absolutely, absolutely. Here's something else that I thought was very interesting about this report. Because according to MediaMatters.org, they said that the Washington Post reported that that the staffers spent more than a year sifting through tens of thousands of documents from multiple companies, interviewing social media company executives and former staffers, and analyzing thousands of posts. They found that roughly 15 social networks played a significant role in the attack. And some platforms even bent their rules to avoid penalizing conservatives out of fear of reprisal ahead of the insurrection. So if that's the case, if the conservatives has such a fear factor and a stronghold on these platforms, what does that say for the other schools of thought that are out there? What does this say about the relationship that people have with social media for you? Do you think that this is going to open the door? I mean, these platforms, for one, they're still in existence, so they haven't like been shut down as a result of this. So does that mean that now these conservatives will feel more emboldened to continue to talk the way they talk, share the way they share, and that these other folks from other schools of thought, whether you're talking about liberals, whether you're talking about Pan-Africanists, anybody, that they're going to have to kind of push their way through to be seen, to be heard? I mean, it just seems like there's going to be this power struggle on these platforms, and that these social network platforms may not be able to do anything about it.
Well, as I'm sure you know, and as I'm sure your audience knows, there is a kind of bias and prejudice with regard to Twitter and Facebook in particular. I've known people who've been placed in Twitter jail, as it's called, Facebook jail. They make some sort of innocent sounding post, but supposedly it violates some sort of internal rule or regulation, and they're ousted either temporarily or permanently from the platform. If we are to take seriously this Media Matters report that you're now discussing, that kind of Twitter jail and Twitter imprisonment does not necessarily apply to those from the right wing, from the conservative end of the spectrum. Once again, this cries out for some sort of democratic approach, but once again, with the Freedom Caucus having a stranglehold on the House of Representatives and the Democrats having a bare majority in the U.S. Senate, and with Mr. Biden under fire because of his mishandling of documents, I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Very, very interesting. I want to open this up to our online culture crew to get their take on this, folks, as we're talking about January 6th committee's latest findings that show that social media networks bent the rules for President Trump and his followers ahead of the Capitol insurrection. Here's another piece, and folks, throw your comments in the chat as we're streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, and on our website at Black Star Network as well. Take a listen to this, Doc, that Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, they stopped fact-checking Trump after his 2024 presidential campaign announcement, and is expected to decide whether the risk to public safety has receded enough to allow him back onto its platforms. Help me to understand this, sir.
Well, I'm not sure why they're taking that approach, because as you know, Mr. Trump has his own platform, Truth Social.
Right.
And then there are these specialized platforms such as Parler, which played a pivotal role in the insurrection, according to the January 6th committee. So I take it that the established platforms like Facebook and Twitter are feeling the heat from the right wing. They're not able to withstand the heat. And so therefore they're running up the white flag.
So if that's the case, I mean, when you announce that if you stop fact, here's the conundrum I find this situation puts us in. If lies brought us here, then why would you not put up a measure to counteract the lies that will continue to take us to another place that we may not want to go? I don't understand. Why would you stop fact-checking a man who has at the center of the insurrection? You stop fact-checking him, and then you're considering whether the all of the heat has receded. I just don't understand the thinking behind this. And I mean, I know that the report said that there was fear of reprisal from conservatives, but I also have to say that I'm sure profit margin was a huge factor in making this decision. As conservatives drive, you have this drive for content. The more people you can bring to the platform, the more money that you can get for the ads and all of that, the other money-making opportunities for this. So, and in the big scheme of things, also, Dr. Horn, just thinking about it, if we're getting into this public space, if these are public spaces, quote unquote, right, as Elon Musk has often put out, this is the community, the town square, and all of these public spaces. are we actually opening the door to the demise of our own government system? Are we allowing there to be this eroding of how we communicate, how we dialogue? Are we allowing for these forces to come to the town square, take over the town square, and we're just like, it's okay. It's fine. It's just talk. Not really understanding the long-term impact of these things.
I think you have to understand, with regard to Facebook in particular, they've been losing quite a bit of money lately, incredible amounts of money. They've been laying off employees in the thousands. At the same time, if the Republicans return to power, which cannot be ruled out in November 2024, the Trump White House can then, through the Federal Trade Commission, through the Antitrust Department of the Justice Department, Department of Justice, can then try to force Facebook to sell WhatsApp, to sell Instagram on antitrust principles, thereby shrinking the company. So rather than running that kind of risk, it seems that Facebook in particular is acting preemptively, trying to get on the good side of the right wing and the good side of the conservatives. We'll see if that works.
How does this stand for you and from your vantage point, Doc, for Black, for Black nationalists, for Black leaders who want to express their political views of this? Do you foresee that these social media companies will start to, clamp down on Black leadership, and unlike what we're seeing on the conservative side of things?
Well, I think it's already happening. I'm looking at the comments from the Culture Crew, and they're making reference to being in Facebook jail for making sarcastic comments as if I was threatening violence. So says Teresa Jolly. Ming Lee Natasha Serge says you can't say anything bad about Trump on Facebook without going to Facebook jail. So what you've sketched and what you've outlined is already taking place. There's already a double standard that bids fair to only get worse in coming months and coming years.
Should we, and that opens up to another conversation, because, when Elon Musk took over, there was a huge number of Black folks, Twitter users who said that, we should stay on the platform and quote unquote kind of fight for the platform. We already know on Twitter, there's a Black Twitter community, but should that be the case for Facebook and other spaces? Should Black folks continue to kind of fight to stay in these spaces because we need to be heard, we need to be seen, or should we really consider leaving these spaces en masse?
I think both of those alternatives should be considered. Recall what Donald Trump did when they ousted him from Facebook and Twitter. He started Truth Social, for example. And I think that fighting on many fronts has been the hallmark of the Black liberation movement for centuries now. And so the idea of fighting within the walls and the halls of Facebook and Twitter, and at the same time exploring alternatives to both makes eminent good sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Ed Hughes said, build our own platform. F them. Hey, I hear you, Ed. Ming Lee, you said leave it. You also said Facebook was attacking woke culture and the people as well. Facts. And then Conscious Thoughts, you said, because for Raji Muhammad, we now live in the zeitgeist of alternative facts, per Kellyanne Conway. Wow. There it is right there. Look, we got to take a quick pause when we come forward. More conversation with Dr. Gerald Horne for the Horne Report, and of course with you. So stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about Blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196. Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Pull up a chair. Take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punching.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We've been checking in with Dr. Gerald Horne for this week's Horne Report. I want to give you the latest of what's happening in Ukraine, in the Ukraine-Russian war, as there has been more heated talks about taking this war to the next level, to a more nuclear level. This has been the running theme coming from the Kremlin since this war began, that they are not afraid to kick that war up a notch. It was just announced that as the U.S. and allies arm Ukraine, that Russia warns that losing a conventional war can trigger a nuclear war. Man, now this is coming forward. This comes out as the United States and allies are prepared to send out a new shipment of military hardware for Ukraine and Kyiv, and pushes its Western partners for modern battle tanks and other heavy weapons. But Moscow responded, Dr. Horne, on today that with a number of familiar battery of threats, saying that if alluding to the arsenal that it has for nuclear war, and saying that, look, if we lose this, everybody's going to lose. We have been in this war. It looks like with this 11 months at this point. This is almost a year since this war has started, and we're still not seeing an end to this war. There have been many casualties. There have been many talks about diplomacy. There's been many talks about resources. But the one big thing that has always kind of shared as this cloud over this conversation has been nuclear weapons and the possibility of a nuclear war. What's your take on this, Doc?
Well, perhaps the most ominous is the news coming out of France, where the leading French intellectual Emmanuel Todd just was interviewed in Le Figaro, the well-known French periodical, in which he said that right now we're at the beginning stage of World War III. That is to say, with Russia and China on one side of the barricades, and the United States and its North Atlantic allies, perhaps accompanied by Japan and South Korea, on the other side of the barricades. I think that kind of alarm that was sounded in France has been echoed to a degree in Germany, where a former top military advisor to former German leader Angela Merkel suggested that the United States needs to push more aggressively for negotiations. That is not the path that's being taken, because as we speak at the Ramstein base, military base, engineered, or that is to say, that has been formed by the United States after World War II, there is an important meeting taking place as we speak, involving the United States and its allies, where we expect the news to be a ramping up of military shipments to the Ukrainian battlefield, including tanks. That may be a red line for Moscow. And I'm afraid to say as well that Congress particularly the Democratic caucus, has not exemplified courage. That is to say, recall that a few months ago, you had the progressive members of the caucus. They made an abortive call for negotiations, but were shouted down by their more hawkish colleagues, and they haven't made a peep since then, as the world, according to Emmanuel Todd, seems to be stumbling towards World War III.
The New York Times has put out a report, Dr. Horn, saying that the U.S. is, quote unquote, warming up to the idea of a Ukraine attack on Russian-controlled Crimea. How does that play out in this whole situation?
Well, it's very dangerous. Recall that Crimea was seized by Russia in early 2014. That led to a sharp downturn in relations between Washington and Moscow. Crimea has been incorporated into Russian territory. Apparently, there was a referendum of the citizenry there who were in favor of joining Russia and leaving Ukraine. So if Ukraine is going to now attack Crimea, that'll be a further escalation and draw the world ever closer to what I just made reference to. That is to say, World War III. And as the saying goes, we're not sure how World War III will end, but it's clear that World War IV would be fought with sticks and stones.
Damn. Now, Doc, we had a conversation, and this is we didn't get an opportunity to talk to you at this time. And here's first and foremost, folks. Here are some of the images, and I want to make sure I'm checking it with my team. Is this? Are we looking at Ukraine, folks? And Keenan, let me know if this is Ukraine. Yeah, these are images from Ukraine. And as you can see, this is the devastation of war, folks. This is the devastation of war. And, you have people who are living through this moment right now, Dr. Horn, that's trying to figure out, where does this situation end? What's the light at the end of the tunnel? And you're breaking it down, saying, look, if they move less strategically, if Ukraine moves into a Russian-controlled space like Crimea and starts to attack to that space, that the people of Ukraine and the people of Russia, they're not going to see an end to this. They're not going to see an end to this. And that the world essentially is going to be pulled into this whole situation. And so, I'm not sure if this is something that we are prepared for. I'm not sure if this is something that the United States, I don't know if President Biden is going to be putting some boots on the ground very soon to assist with. It seems like there are a lot of uncertainties at this point, Dr. Horn.
Uncertainties indeed. And I think that it is well for you to raise this up to the level that you're raising it, because quite frankly, we need much more of an outcry on this side of the Atlantic. As noted, there is increasing concern in Europe about what's happening in their backyard. I guess the opinion in the United States is that the Atlantic Ocean separates the United States from Europe. And so we don't need to pay attention to the flames that are now erupting in Ukraine and may erupt soon in Russia. But that kind of attitude, I think, is very dangerous. It's ostrich-like. It's burying your head in the sand, quite frankly, and is not sustainable. Absolutely.
And give me your take on the cost. When we talked about this weeks ago, when President Zelensky of Ukraine came to America, then the president said there's more billions of dollars along with the military hardware that's being shipped. But when we're talking about the cost and the American people not being fully in agreement with how much money this country is spending on this war, this thing can backfire very, very badly for both both parties, both Democrats and Republicans. And it makes me think of Dr. King. We just celebrated him this past weekend, and that when he spoke out against the Vietnam War, that was the straw that broke the camel's back in terms of his usefulness, quote unquote, to America and its human rights efforts. That people got upset with with Dr. King because he stood against the Vietnam War. And more importantly, he saw that the war was not just morally wrong, but he saw that it would do more harm than good to the poor of this country. I feel like we're at that place too, Doc, that if we don't raise our voices against the fact that this war is not our war, it's not in the best interest of the American people, and it will cost the American people not just lives, and potentially lives. It will cost us because of the billions of dollars that's being sent over there and not being invested back into our issues here at home. That we're going to see some very, very serious a serious backlash. Am I thinking crazy and trying to connect these dots here, Doc?
Not at all. As we said more than once on the culture, it's virtually obscene that as homelessness stalks Los Angeles, New York, and every city in between, with a disproportionate percentage of the unhoused being of African origin, it's obscene to be sending billions of dollars across the Atlantic to Ukraine. And as we've also said on the culture, it's a boomerang effect because you send the tax dollars to Ukraine and then those dollars come back to the United States into the pockets of executives at Raytheon and Lockheed. And this in turn leads these executives to make campaign donations on both sides of the aisle, which keeps the machine, the business of death, operating. So we need to raise our voices as you have sought to do, and as we have sought to do, particularly in terms of emulating the late Dr. King.
Absolutely. We got to. We have to. At this point, when you can't talk, and this is I'm using the president's words, you can't talking about saving the soul of democracy and then allowing this to continue to happen. And I mean the level of investment, financial investment, you're talking about the level of resources, you're talking about making these unilateral decisions without Americans really having a say into this process. But you're talking about saving the soul of this country, saving the soul of democracy, Mr. President. And it's very, very confusing. And it's giving off a mixed signal that this country doesn't need to try to take in. So we will certainly keep our eyes on it. We got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, we're going to have more discussion with Dr. Gerald Horne. Stay with us. It's The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We've been talking to Dr. Gerald Horn about a number of issues, and certainly, folks, we invite you to join us in the conversation. So post your comments in our chat as we're streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, and BlackStarNetwork.com. All right, Dr. Horn, for the final conversation I wanted to have with you today, this is about resources here back at home, looking at where we are in the space of farming and organic foods, fruits and vegetables. Now, USDA has come out with a major regulation that changes the rule to prevent what they called organic fraud. This is something that I did not know took place, but I'm glad that this rule change is happening. And apparently, the strengthening organic enforcement, or SOE amendments to the USDA's National Organic Program, which is this federal program that enforces national standards for organically produced agricultural products, is strengthening oversight and enforcement of the production, handling, and sale of organic agricultural products in the United States. According to their memo, they have decided that they wanted to make sure that they cut down on any type of foods that would be deemed as organic, but most importantly, that these foods don't go under the radar when they say they are organic, but they're really not organic. And organic farmers are very happy to see that this level of oversight and enforcement is taking place, especially from the USDA. But here's my question, though. If this had to be done, does that mean that everything that we have on the shelf currently right now that's labeled organic might not be actually organic? And what does that mean for those of us who partake in organic eating? In terms of trust, can we trust the USDA, the USDA's organic label? Can we trust them at this point, knowing that this organic fraud has been happening?
I think you should be very skeptical of this label organic because it's unclear what it really means. That's point number one. Point number two is that I dare say that part of the reason why you've had this turn with regard to the United States Department of Agriculture is pressure from overseas. And that's a lesson for us with regard to our issues as well. What I mean is that a good deal of U.S. agriculture is exported abroad, not least to Europe. In Europe, there's quite a bit of skepticism of genetically modified organisms, GMOs,
right,
which of course are an essential part of agriculture in the United States of America. The Europeans have been pressuring the United States to curtail and cease that practice. The United States has been reluctant to do so, but this latest news item that you're bringing to our attention, it seems to me, is a reflection of the fact that U.S. agribusiness is sensitive to international pressure, and therefore the USDA is responding accordingly.
Right. And you know, there for folks that may not know this, Dr. Horn, there are only a handful, and I'm not talking about, you know, hundreds of companies, folks. There are literally only a handful of companies that are producing a huge amount, a substantial amount of foods that we are all consuming, right? Literally less. And the last time I checked, Dr. Horn, I think it was like less than 12, right? Mm-hmm. Companies that are producing these foods and that are getting these USDA regulations approved. But the larger picture is, considering the fact that we're all experiencing this inflation, food has gone up tremendously in states across this country. The cost of things have certainly gone up. But more importantly, we don't know. We only are hoping that the government has the health and well-being of the American people at its best interest, and that profit doesn't take precedence over people. And so my concern is okay, y'all strengthening these things, but what's the assurance that you're going to be able to keep these level of enforcement, keep these regulations in place? What about bringing in not just organic farmers, but what about bringing in consumers into the conversation? And what about bringing in, you know, communities that have often been marginalized as a result of food disparities into the discussion? How do we make sense of all of this, Dr. Horn?
Well, in terms of inflation, I don't know if you've looked at the price of a dozen eggs of late.
Oh my gosh.
At least in Houston, it's gotten to the point where in this congested urban space, you have people who are now buying hens and trying to basically collect eggs rather than go to the local supermarket to buy eggs. With regard to agribusiness, a term we should use more often than agriculture, your audience should pay close and careful attention to the giants of the U.S. Midwest, speaking of Cargill, Cargill, or ADM, otherwise known as Archer Daniels Midland. They have a stranglehold over what we put in our stomachs. As with the military-industrial complex, the agribusiness also lobbies incessantly the U.S. Department of Agriculture to twist and turn them to the advantage of agribusiness. And that makes this news item that you're bringing before us all the more surprising.
Right. And is there, as far as you know, I mean, you are a man of history. You've studied our history, and you looked at the world. Like, what can the people do in a moment like this? You know, when you have food resources that are high, when you have food resources that are not meeting the full demand of the market and of the people, what path have people taken historically to make sure that they can still eat?
Well, fortunately, we have organizations. You have a Black Farmers Organization, which is still quite active. It's obviously trying to seek reparations from the United States Department of Agriculture because of decades of bias and discrimination against Black farmers, which has led to massive land loss on their part, has hampered them in terms of getting their produce to market, has compromised their ability to compete in an agricultural market dominated by Cargill and Archer Daniels Midland. You also have United Farm Workers, and you also have other unions of the workers in the fields. And the workers in the fields are disproportionately in the state in which you're now cited. Speaking of due north of Los Angeles, in the area around Kern County and Bakersville. Mm-hmm. And you have quite a bit of activism there with regard to agribusiness. And so I would say hooking up with the United Farm Workers and hooking up with the Black farmers is the way to go. Absolutely. And you know, I had a conversation not too long ago here on this show, Dr. Horn, where we talked about, you know, urban gardening, where we talked about you know, food pantries, where we're talking about, you know, churches and other community-based institutions being a part of that process. And I'm wondering, I know that's a grassroots effort considering the magnitude of this situation, but I'm feeling like we might have to go back to basics in order to just, you know, provide for the basic necessities of people and families at this point, because the government seems to not be as diligent about making sure that good food is getting to the people. Well, urban farming is something that's prevalent in South Central Los Angeles, for example. It has been prevalent there for some time. You have urban farming and other urban sites in the United States where you have a significant percentage of Black residents. And obviously, that's something that needs to be explored. But at the same time, we have to put pressure, once again, on our representatives in Congress, not least the Congressional Black Caucus. For example, Congressman Hank Johnson, who represents a heavily rural area in the Peach State and has interests in the Agricultural Committee of the U.S. House of Representatives, we need to be engaged with these CBC members about what kinds of regulations and laws can be passed that will do something about this startling inflation in the agricultural sector and seek to reduce the influence of agribusiness. Absolutely. Dr. Horn, our time with you has certainly been very, very well spent, and I appreciate all of your intelligence and insight and analysis on these things. So we look forward to reconnecting with you very soon, sir, to get another installment of the Horn Report, but I thank you for joining us today. Thank you for inviting me. Absolutely. Dr. Gerald Horn checking in all the time here on The Culture. Folks, y'all make sure y'all stay tuned for what our brother has to say. Look, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's shift gears. We're going to check in with a father-daughter duo
who's making dollars and cents as they go into the space of becoming fragrance makers. Stay tuned. Their story is up next. And then later on, let's talk about what's happening in the state of Florida as advanced placement classes are under attack by the governor, who says that, when you're talking about AP African-American classes, they don't carry any cultural significance. They're not important. We'll talk about that story up next. So stay tuned for the next hour. We got a lot to cover right here on The Culture, here on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
An angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home. You dig?
Folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Faraji Muhammad. Folks, just want to let you know, if you missed the first hour of The Culture, you definitely want to check it out on the replay as we talk to Dr. Gerald Horne to give us this week's installment of the Horne Report, where we discussed both national and international issues. The doc covered a lot in today's discussion and gives us something to certainly think about. So make sure y'all check it out at the Horne Report. As we talk to Dr. Gerald Horne from the University of Houston. And also while you're there for the replay, make sure you do your part to support us here at Black Star Network. We continue to do the great work of putting out content and having conversations that we know that Black America and all of America needs to have about a variety of topics and issues. So make sure you go to our website today at blackstarnetwork.com, support us financially, share the content, and make sure you also follow us on social media on Instagram and Twitter at Black Star Network as well. We're going to be joined by two dynamic people, a father-daughter duo in a moment, who has been taking their ideas of making fragrances and making it make sense. Folks, I'm so excited to be checking in with this duo in a few moments, and we're going to talk to them about how they're going into the fragrance industry, and most importantly, what does that mean, especially in building generational wealth for their families. Now, this is certainly something that we have always talked about, but it's always a good thing to talk to folks that are living this. But before we get to our very special guest, we're also joined by another contributor here on The Culture. You also see him on Roland Martin Unfiltered. And this is our brother who serves as the host for the African History Network. You can check his work out at theafricanhistorynetwork.com. My brother Michael in Hotep, is joining me this afternoon for a couple of these conversations as well. Brother Michael, it's always good to talk to you, brother. How are you today?
Hey, Faraji, I'm all right. How you doing, brother?
I'm good. I'm good. Just very quickly, as we our guests will be coming on, let's talk a little bit about this level of entrepreneurship and talking about this the path of building generational wealth. You know, I remember, Brother Michael, when my dad has been an entrepreneur for years. He always had some idea on what to do on how to support the family.
Right.
But I remember he owned a small carryout / restaurant in Baltimore years ago, and worked hard at it. And you know, it was in that time period. I remember as a child just going to the restaurant and helping out and doing what I can. I remember, you know, him often talking about having family and friends to be supportive. And we know that in business, sometimes they say that, you know, never bring your family into the same business that you're doing. But this is changing now because you can't build generational wealth without having family at the table. So I wanted to kind of get your take on this idea of going to work with your family, building a business with your family, and most importantly, you know, creating a sustainable capital where you can continue to support your family on a major level. What's your take on this?
Well, usually in my degrees in business administration, the major in marketing from Wayne State University, I taught entrepreneurship for 7 years. I managed African-American companies that had government contracts, City of Detroit, County of Wayne, State of Michigan, and family members worked in those businesses and adjacent businesses as well. Saying that you shouldn't go into business with family or shouldn't have family work in business, things like that. No other ethnic group or culture in the U.S. really operates based upon that. They just teach that to us. They just teach that stuff. They just teach that.
Wait a minute, hold on, bro, Michael. You're saying that that's not like across the board. That's mostly a black.
From they had to have. Why did laws have to be created dealing with nepotism? Because people were bringing family into business. People were bringing the family into organizations. You look at a history of family-owned businesses created in this country, whether it's dealing with Walmart, whether it's dealing with and even Friends. Okay, whether you're dealing with Apple computers. But when we look at small businesses, okay, these are mom and pop stores. These are family-owned businesses, and then you have businesses that get handed down to the second generation to family. When you look at, and even if you look at the mafia, you're dealing with family. Okay, so they teach that to us because family is the foundation of African-American communities, African-American culture. When we look at the cooperatives and when we talk about cooperative economics, but understand the concept of cooperatives, these were the members of the cooperatives are part owners of the businesses. These are principles we brought with us from Africa. And when you look at a lot of businesses that we've had historically in this country, these were family-owned businesses, or they brought in family members, things like this. Now, the main thing that you want to understand is you want to make sure that you assign the correct position and duties and responsibilities to the right person. Okay, and this is something I teach in my entrepreneurship classes. If you know Kiki has anger management problems, don't put Kiki on the cash register dealing with customers, because that's a ticking time bomb. Okay, you need to have her in the back stocking shelves. You need to keep her away from customers. But we go into gas stations, we go into grocery stores owned by Arabs and Chaldeans. You trying to tell me they don't have their family members working in there? You go in there during the summer, they have a 12 or 13-year-old behind the counter taking your money because he's the son and he's out of school and he's learning the family business to take over. They teach that to us. That's not how they operate.
Well, I'm glad that you brought. I'm glad you dispelled that myth for us, because I think that's been something that's been told. Like I said, I've been hearing that for years. So I'm glad that you broke that up.
Yeah.
So
just make sure you have the right person.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
In the position. Some people should not be in the business, period, whether they're a family member or your worst enemy or your best friend. So make sure you have the right person. But no, that's a resource for us, our family. And if we focused on that, we could really focus more on and create more generational wealth.
Absolutely. Our very special guest is here. I want to welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network, Mr. Brian Watkins. He's been curating scents since he was 11 years old when he started his passion with his daughter, Nora. He was inspired to leave behind a lasting legacy and to take on that idea of generational wealth to the next level. So together they founded the NYC-based olfactive scenting and scent marketing company called NORYAN. And their mission is to bring the power of scent to a worldwide community and help others create olfactory extensions of themselves. Folks, that is the website for NORYAN that Mr. Brian Watkins and his daughter, Nora, have created. Man, oh man, where there is scent, there are memories. Brian, welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. How are you doing, brother?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm doing well. I'm doing well. And yourself?
I'm good. I'm good. You're also joined by one of our contributors here, Michael Hotep, who is a man about business, Black businesses, particularly in the country and particularly in the city of Detroit. So, you know, we wanted to have this conversation with you. First and foremost, congratulations, big brother.
Oh, thank you
for kicking off this business venture. You got your daughter that's been working with you. Y'all a father-daughter duo. I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. I have a 3-year-old daughter, so I can only imagine. I can't wait for the day she comes to me with a business idea and say, "Daddy, let's go in business together." I'll be like, "Okay, let's do it."
yeah, man. That's again, that's the world right now, and I wanted to leave a legacy for her. I want to build something for her. I want to teach her about financial literacy and also teach her on how to do a business and just having that bonding relationship. I taught her how to make candles and just, teach her and everything in general. And that she's the co-founder. She actually, her name's on everything. Her name's on the trademark and everything.
So first and foremost, let's talk a little bit about your history, your path to getting to this place. And then as you talk about bringing your daughter in, how did you get introduced to the olfactory business?
It was just like a calling. So when I was 11 years old, it's just, I don't know. I love smelling things. I always used to go to the boutiques where my mom went into these designer stores, and I just smelled. The sense of smell was just like great for me. And growing up, my mom couldn't, she wasn't buying us the high end fragrances or the high end colognes. So I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna make my own. And wow. I went to different stores. I got oils. I got other bases, and I just started mixing. I didn't really know what I was doing at 11, but I just trial and error, and that's what happened at 11. And then moving on ever since, going on further. Even in college or wherever throughout my life, I've always had a lot of fragrances. I never liked to smell like anybody, and I was always attracted. The first thing when I go into a room or go into a place, the first thing I notice is the smell.
Wow.
Because 30% of what you smell, you remember. It's actually the first impression. So if something doesn't smell good, like, wow, you're always going to remember that the first time you saw something or the first time you interacted, it did not smell good. That's why you could smell something now, and that could trigger memories of your childhood. It could trigger memories of anything. The sense of smell, your olfactive, huge.
Actually, that is huge. So your mom cultivated this start for you to get into this business, right? And you're 11 years old. You're 11 years old, right? And so as a young Black 11-year-old boy, you're like, oh, I want to go into like making scents. I want to, make candles. I want to go into the fragrance business. And so talk to us about, like, was your family open to that, or did they look at you and go, what? What are you talking about?
Nah. Yeah, something like what am I talking about? But they knew I was always into fragrance and scents. I taught myself how to make candles. I taught same thing, yeah. And I taught my daughter how to make candles. Just look up. I'm a heavy researcher. Anytime I'm hyper focused on something, I want to know every and anything about it across. Like, I'll shut everything off and I'll just learn everything I need to know. So I did that years back in college. When I found out I was having a daughter, I actually wanted to teach her how to make candles. So again, when she came of age, I taught her how to make candles at the age of 5, and she made candles with me now, and she approve or sign off on the different scents that we create. And now I have perfumers that I have on the team as well, and where we create the scents, and she signs off on it as well.
Wow. Wow. All right, we got a couple of moments before we take our next pause. But Brother Michael, you want to share any questions for our brother as we're talking about this? Because I need to take a minute to just take in on his story right now.
Right. Well, hey, Brian, congratulations on the business and much success to you. You have mood boosting scents from what I understand. Can you give us some examples of how the different scents create a different mood? What type of mood do different scents create?
Oh, yeah. So a lot of people don't realize the psychology behind scenting. Scent invokes and triggers certain moods or certain reactions from consumers. It's huge in the business market, or certain business know about it. That's why, and what I do as well for different hospitality businesses, I create scents for them and I actually diffuse it in their establishment, because just like anything, when you go into some of these businesses or high-end hotels, you walk in and you just say, wow, it smells good in there. Yes, because now you're going to remember that scent of the hotel. Anytime you smell something similar, you're going to say, wow, I remember that hotel. Or when people speak about that hotel, you're going to I remember it smelling good. So when I sit down with clients, I say, what are you looking to try to invoke out these, from your customers? If you're trying to lift up the mood, if you're trying to have people be happy, you're trying to have people spend more, if you're trying to have people have a calm, relaxed mood, it determines what note and what type of oil I'm going to use for that particular scent. So citrus, for example, and bergamot, orange, those are, it brings you up. It's lively. You feel good. It's mood boosting. Things like lavender, things like eucalyptus, it's relaxing. It calms you down. And those are just some of the things that, something like, like the woods, different type of woods, it gives you a more comfortable and just a relaxed and luxury vibe. So it all depends on what that person's looking for.
All right. Thanks. Thank you. Yeah, these are things we learn in business school, because my degree's in marketing. So these are things in the foundation of marketing and psychology. So these are things marketers have known for decades. Very
Absolutely.
good.
Absolutely.
And just like, if you see me in person, more than likely you'll never smell me wearing the same scent. I have my personal collection, I have over 600. And I I know every single smell of them. Yeah. So I have it broken down to seasons, times of days, occasions, you name it.
Hey, wait a minute. Hold on, man. Hold on, brother. Hold on. Now, I love a good scent, man. Hold on. You got over 600 scents that you use personally.
Personal bottles.
Wait a minute. Say it again.
Personal bottles, but I also have a lot of little decants too all over. So it's probably close to 1,000.
Now, are these all the 600 scents? Are those all scents that you made yourself?
Right.
No, so these are just in general. I appreciate scents from everybody.
Okay.
So, and I get inspiration from everything. So I want to smell, if something's unique, because people's like, oh, wow, this smells bad. No, I mean, you just don't like it. Scent is like a beauty, right? It's in the eye of the beholder. So I want to know how it smells, because I appreciate any type of scent, whether I find it good or whether I find it bad. I see the beauty in it, or I see, what it does.
I hear you. Hey, Brian, you gonna have the women and that's watching today going crazy. Pauline checked in and said, "There's nothing like a good smelling man." Pauline, get off in here, man.
And I have recommendations if you want something, And by the way, Mr. Hotep, right?
Hotep, yes.
Yeah. I could see, of course, a Kappa knows how to smell good, because I see you a Sigma,
Right. We know how to smell good too. Yeah, I agree.
Hey, yo, Brian, look, I gotta take a pause, man. Let me digest all this that you're sharing with us today, brother. We want to certainly continue the conversation with Brian Watkins of NORYAN. Him and his daughter have created NORYAN, an all-black, olfactory company with that speaks to your sense, folks. Look at this website. I just cannot get over how dope the website is. Where there is scent, there are memories. We're going to continue the conversation talking about NORYAN, entrepreneurship, and so much more. And of course, get your questions and comments like Pauline. Pauline, I see you, sis. So stay with us. This conversation will continue on the other side, right here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home. You dig?
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, Dave.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Folks, welcome back to the show. We have been talking to Brian Watkins, who serves as the co-founder of the all-factor scent and scent marketing company, NORYAN, a scent company that he is co-founder with his daughter, Nora. And Brian has been talking to us about what it means to be in that space, in that business, and also just blowing us away with his collection of scents of being between 600 to 1,000 different scents that he personally has in his collection, folks. Oh my gosh! I'm also checking in with my big brother, Brother Michael Imhotep, as we talk to Brother Brian Watkins. And I want to open up the conversation for you to join us in the discussion. So make sure you post your comments and your questions in the chat, as we would love to hear what you say. Brian, Brother Michael, Brian, I want to bring you back in, and Keena, let's do this, because folks are really interested in the fact that you got this black-owned, New York City-based all-factory company, scent marketing company. So let's put up the website once again, Keenan, so people can see it. And this is NORYAN.com. Is that am I correct on that, Brian?
Yeah, NORYAN.
NORYAN.com. NORYAN, NORYAN.com. And folks can definitely invest and order from you. So when they go onto your website, there we go. Thank you so much, Keenan. When they go onto your website, what can they do? Can they order scents? What can they do? What do you want them to do?
Yeah, so there's candles there that you could look at. Those candles have some of the candles have different scents from the diffuser and the diffuser oil, so you could order that, and then you could order the diffuser oil, and we also bringing it into that whole hotel experience. We're bringing it into your car with higher quality oil with our car diffusers, and there's a home diffuser there too. You could order as well. And then there's the oils in the sense that's, again, you fill up with that. You fill up the diffuser with our oil and our scents, which is made to handle our oil particularly.
Wow. And when you say our oil, what makes your oil different than someone else's or another company's oil?
Oh, higher quality. If you go, let me tell you, on this journey, I realized a lot of these companies, I don't want to say any names, but they don't use the best quality in their stuff. They, they use low quality, and because it's about their bottom line, I guess. But it's not a lot of high quality stuff. You might think just because you see the name that it's the best thing. A lot of the time it's probably not. But I wanted to make sure, because it's the love of it for me and my daughter. Like, we wanted the best, like we wanted the highest quality that we could use. We don't want to cut it and dilute it. That's something that a lot of companies do. They dilute and cut their oil down. So you're not really getting the full effect of it.
Absolutely. So talk to us a little bit about getting into this space, because I'm not, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brian and Brother Michael, I haven't heard of a Black-owned olfactory scent marketing company before, right? Like, I'm assuming that there aren't many of you in the space right now. Is that the landscape right now, bro?
Yeah, that's a correct assumption, because a lot of people don't even know about it. A lot of businesses don't know the effects that it could have on their particular business and on their customers. So a lot of people don't know. I've been in the whole fragrance space for a long time, and I've just studied the whole psychology and effects of different fragrances and different notes and different just scents on you, on the human brain, and just on a person in general.
Right.
So yeah, and I've just, again, you'll always catch me with some sort of scent on me smelling. I'm looking for inspiration anywhere. And that's how I don't know, I'm just wired like that.
And I'm glad that you are wired like this, because we need it. And Brother Michael, when we're talking about breaking into a new space, like, as a person who's a marketer, who understands the business dynamic, like, when you're talking about breaking into a space like this, a space that has been dominated not just by white people, but just by companies, because I think a lot of us, we choose our scents based on the company that's putting it out there, more so, when we don't see the face of the company, like, we don't see who runs, I don't know, some of these major scent companies. So to break into that industry, brother, it would seem like it is a Herculean task, is it not, Brother Michael? Oh, you got you on mute, bro. We got you on mute.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I think it is a Herculean task to get beyond just the stage where you may be a vendor at an event.
Yeah,
you just do it on the weekends.
Right,
and
right.
You have a table with the oils, things like this. To get to the level that Brian and his daughter is at is really a Herculean task. But also, as he talked about, you have to do market research. You really have to study the business and figure out, okay, what niche can you create in the business? What can you do that is hard for other businesses to do as well? And when we look at the fragrance companies, whether it's Fenty or whether it's Polo or different, whatever fragrance it is, a lot of them have celebrity endorsers. Mm-hmm. And the celebrity endorser can become the face of the company. So you're competing against that. So you want to find what your competitive advantage is. And, with Brian, he can really explain to people and educate people on olfactory senses and the type of moods it can put people in, and then also how they can use those fragrances as well to bring about the type of mood that they want also.
Absolutely. So, Brian, what would you say your competitive advantage is?
My knowledge. Same thing, my knowledge. Just like Brother Hotep was saying, yeah, a lot of these companies, they have the money, they have the budget, they hire they hire stars, they hire people to market and promote. They could do that. Me, I have my knowledge. I go around, I'm talking to you personally. I'm like, I have it's a love for me. It's not like, yeah, let me just do it. No, it's a love. When I talk to you, you hear the passion, like, because it's a love. I want you and your place to smell good like mine, right? Or I want you to smell however you want to smell, because it doesn't have to be necessarily smell like me, but it makes me happy knowing that you love something and you just enjoy the smell of it. Like, it's great.
My Culture Crew member Janelle, she's a loyal watcher of the show in Black Star. She said you have a fragrance called the Barbershop.
Yeah. So that scent was based after one of my good friends I went to college with. He's a Q, by the way. Name is Shawnee Fair, doing a lot of big things. He has a barber academy in Westchester called Westchester Barber Academy, where he opened up a school for young Black men, or just people in general, to teach them how to cut and actually give them their first experience in barbering. And he just opened up a salon as well. So I went there, and he, again, he started out in the entrepreneur world, business world before I did. So he's like a mentor, and he gives me advice as well on certain things. So I created a scent that smells like the old school barbershop based off of his shop.
That is dope, bro. We got a few moments left, but I want to, are there particular things that we need to keep in mind? Because I want to make sure that we support you and what you and your daughter are doing, brother. Because this is beautiful. This is beautiful. So break it down for us. What kind of products can we expect from NORYAN?
Man, we just have a lot of things going on, and you could expect candles right now. And the diffuser. So we want to stay in home and in the car. So our car diffuser is going to be something that's blowing up. Like, I can't even tell you, it's blowing up. And a lot of people want their car to smell luxury. They're tired of it smelling like, the tree thing hanging in a car. They want, they want that luxury smell. And I have
Brian, look, bro, look. I thought we were friends. You coming on here, you dissing my car and all that, bro.
Yeah, I didn't say who. I didn't say who. I didn't say who. I'm not dissing. I'm trying to help.
No, I get you. So what about so you say you got car air fresheners for the car. You got some candles. We know you have some personal grooming scents as well as part of your product line, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. No, grooming. That's something that, later on down the line, we're going to want to get into, like grooming and, things for kids and just in general. Like, I have so much that I want to do. I don't want to expose everything, but I want to turn it into, a bigger brand. I'm not going to limit myself with just the fusion and, candles. No, I want to get into, beauty. I want to get into, bath. I want to bring it there. And I wanted to bring it to the sense that, people in my culture and my community like and love. Because that's what it's based off of too. And if I may say, I want to tell you a little bit about the branding of my company, because everything I do has meaning. So the name, of course, NORYAN, is a combination of my daughter and I, Nora and Brian, right? And it actually means a symbol of love. And going to the logo itself. So that logo I cleaned it up a little bit, and I'm a history major, and I was a history teacher. And that's an ancient African symbol for the letter W, which is my daughter and I last name, Watkins. So I cleaned it up to have it look like that. And if you look even deeper, right, it's an NY backwards. And it looked like the little crescent there. You could say you're going from the, bottom to the top. But if you look deeper too, it's a C, NYC, because that's where we're from.
There it is. Brother Michael, how important is that? Because that's dope as hell, bro.
Yeah, the branding.
Yeah, the branding, man.
Yeah.
He put a lot of meaning and thought into that joint.
Right. Well, and explaining the branding, if he explains it to customers, that helps them build a bond with him and his daughter as well. And that helps them identify the brand, distinguish it from other brands that they may see, other oils that they may see on the market. So yeah, that's something fantastic, but that's something also his niche as well, to be able to create something like that and have meaning behind it.
Absolutely. Brother Brian, we got a couple of moments left, but I'm wondering, are your scents, one of our Culture Crew members, they wanted to know, CW, are your scents in stores at this point?
No, so we're working on distribution. It being more stores. So they're in 10 stores or in 10 states, stores in those particular states. We're in Texas, Seattle, Colorado, of course, here in New York, but I want to get it into more. And, just like Brother Hotep said, it is an uphill battle. It's a lot of work dealing and trying to get it into certain places and certain stores.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let me ask this question, because you come on to this show, this show goes into far-reaching places that you may not be able to go. What is it that you need right now to take NORYAN to the next level?
I wanted to spread the word. I wanted to get into more places.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I wanted to spread the word. I wanted to blow, because we're ready. We're ready. We just need it to get there. We're ready.
So that distribution.
So
are you looking for any type of investors or any type of supporters at this point?
Right now, as far as investment, not really. Just more. The support would be, again, the product. And and on the business side, the B2B side, contracts. So contracts with more people, more businesses in the hospitality spaces.
Got you. Well, Brother Brian, you put that ask out there, and I'm a true believer that ask and you shall receive. So hopefully from this conversation today, some folks will start to reach out to you, connect with you, and take the brand to the next level. But I just want to say, on behalf of the culture here on Black Star Network, brother, man, you are fantastic. Big shout out to your daughter, Nora, man. And I'm looking forward to hearing about more great things coming from the two of you. And, trust and believe, brother, you always got a home with us here on the Black Star Network to talk about the next step of your business. So congratulations and welcome home, bro.
Definitely. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on. Again, this is not the last that you're going to hear of us, because, again, there's no stopping me. Right, because this is bigger than me. This is a legacy for my daughter, and that. Let me tell you, that right there alone, the times where you just like, oh my gosh, you just feel overwhelmed. That right there,
right?
Absolutely. What's your social, Brother Brian? What's the social that we can connect with you on?
So Instagram, it's NORYAN _NYC. On Facebook, it's NORYAN NORYAN. On even TikTok, it's same thing, at NORYAN _NYC. And that's the same thing for LinkedIn and Twitter.
There it is right there, folks. There it is right there. You got a new follower now, bro. Trust and believe. I'm about to follow you right now. So you got a new follower. Dope IG. I love it. I love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it, bro. Keep up the great work, man. Give our peace and blessings and love to your daughter, Nora. And God willing, we'll reconnect with you soon. All right?
Definitely. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, fam. Thank you. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's talk about the state of Florida and their fight against history with Brother Michael and Hotep. Stay with us. It's the culture here on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches. I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Pull up a chair. Take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. For our final conversation is something I know that is certainly near dear to my guest, Brother Michael and Hotep, as we talk about history and teaching history, and why the fight against history might be a fight that the state of Florida may not be able to handle. But take a look at, let me just share with you the latest about what Governor Ron DeSantis is doing, his administration is doing to prevent the advanced placement of African American studies from being taught in Florida schools. Now, this is based off of a memo that he wrote, where he found that the information that was shared in these AP African American Studies classroom were not culturally valuable or relevant. Let me share with you. Take a look at this, folks. Then this is coming from the governor himself, and craziness. As his administration rejects inclusion of AP African American Study class in Florida high schools, the administration of Republican Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida is blocking a new advanced placement course for high school students on African American Studies. In a January 12th letter to the College Board, the nonprofit organization that oversees AB coursework, the Florida Department of Education's Office of Articulation says the course is inexplicably contrary to Florida law and significantly lacks educational value. Wow. The rejection of an advanced placement African American Studies course follows efforts by DeSantis to overhaul Florida's educational curriculum to limit teaching about critical race theory. Now, in 2021, the state enacted a law that banned teaching the concept, which explores the history of systemic racism in the United States and its continued impacts. The law also banned material from the 1619 Project, a Pulitzer Prize-winning project by the New York Times to reframe American history around the arrival of slave ship on American shores. Last year, DeSantis also signed a bill restricting how schools can talk about race with students. Let me check in with Brother Michael and Hotep. Take a look at this headline here. He's rejecting AP African American Studies. The fight against history, Brother Michael. This is something that this dude has been doing for a minute now.
Yeah, so this is the Florida Department of Education that is rejecting this AP course. So this AP course is a pilot program. It's being picked up by 60 schools across the country from the 2022-2023 school year. The letter had no name attached to it, so it's not clear if Governor Ron DeSantis wrote the letter, but the letter is coming from the Florida Department of Education. They informed the College Board, and the College Board is the nonprofit organization that administers AP exams, advanced placement exams. The Florida Department of Education said that it would not include this African American AP course, history course, in the state of California, in the state of Florida's course directory. So they did not state what was objectionable about the content of the AP African American course. Now, in 2021, the state of Florida enacted a law that banned teaching the concept the concept of critical race theory, which explores the history of systemic racism in the United States and its continued impacts. The law also banned material from the 1619 Project as well. So now it's also not clear if the state of Florida, if a school in the state of Florida, a high school in the state of Florida, was one of the pilot high schools also. Okay, so this is at the high school level. You have about 60 high schools across the country that are participating, will carry this AP course. So now we see that there's a renewed attack
in the past 2 years, especially going back to 2020 when Trump was in office, and attacking African American history and rebranding what is called critical race theory. And that stemmed from an executive order from Donald Trump in 2020 that dealt with banning critical race theory being taught to government employees or being used at the government level. Okay, and then in it was about March of 2021, you had a guy named Christopher Rufo. He put out a tweet that talked about how they wanted to rebrand critical race theory, and they wanted it so that anytime somebody hears something crazy in the media about race, they automatically think critical race theory.
Right.
So what's happened is that you've had the right wing, you've had Republicans, you've had the GOP to rebrand what critical race theory is. Okay. And critical race theory basically is a legal analysis that deals with how it's a legal analysis taught in law school, taught in graduate schools, and a little bit in undergraduate. It deals with how laws and policies in this country, even after the civil rights movement, how African Americans have not been able to make the advances that they should have made, and the lasting impacts of racism in laws. Okay, so it's a legal analysis. It's not taught in K through 12. Okay, critical race theory is not taught in K through 12. Christopher Rufo, RUFO, is a tweet he did March 15th, 2021, and anybody can Google this. And he said the goal is to have the public read something crazy in the newspaper and immediately think critical race theory. We have decodified the term and will recodify it to annex the entire range of cultural constructions that are unpopular with Americans. Now, he's really talking about white Americans, okay? And all this is a backlash also to the Black Lives Matter movement, to the movement that really took hold after George Floyd was killed, things of this nature. All right. So now the problem is, now this is a well-financed campaign to distort what critical race theory is. They are backed by Fox News. They're backed by dark money. And if people just read the article, there was a 16-page expose from NBC News that came out July 15th, 2021, called Critical Race Theory Battle Invade School Boards with Help from Conservative Groups. And it talks about, they identified at the time 165 school-based groups. And what they do is they one of the things they do is they get white conservatives to run for positions on the school board. So then when they gain control of the school boards, then they can attack what they call critical race theory, but really restrict how African-American history and history of white supremacy and racism is taught in schools. Now, the problem is that for African-Americans and for those who are Democrats, what have you, there is not a well-financed countermeasure to deal with this. And that's one of the problems that we are experiencing.
Oh, no doubt. I want to first take a look at this, folks. Critical race theory.
That's it right there.
This is what Brother Michael was talking about. And our brother Brian Watkins, he's actually still on the call here. He actually taught history, which I did not know. So he's a history educator. I want to bring, let's bring him back on, Brian, if he's still on the call, because I would love to get his take on this from being in the classroom and looking at the implications of something like that. Brian, thank you again, brother, for staying a few extra minutes on this. But you taught history. You're in New York City. This is down in Florida. So what do you make of this situation?
It's interesting, but I mean, I'm honestly, I'm not shocked, right? It's in Florida, right? No shade to Florida. I'm not shocked because I don't understand how labeling something else when it's history, right? It's history. It's the history. If you're not proud of it, it's history.
Right.
And it's the truth.
Right. So my thing is from the classroom perspective, right? When you see this type of pushback against history, I know some teachers who kind of go along to get along, but I know a lot more teachers, Brian, who are like, bump that. Black children need to know the truth. So if y'all fire me for teaching the truth, then so be it. Do you feel like that may happen in Florida?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you a little backstory. So initially, when I went to college, I was information systems, computer science. I took a history class, a Black history class, which blew my mind. I said, why didn't I learn about this? It talked about Tulsa, Oklahoma. It talked about those type of community. I said, how come I didn't learn about this in high school? How come I didn't learn about this? And it blew ice to the point where I switched my major. I majored in history. And I said, I want to get this word out. I want to teach, and have others know about this. And that's what I went on to do. And I mainly taught in New York, but for a year, I went down to Texas and I taught. Let me tell you something. Texas and Florida, they're right up there.
They're right up there, bro.
They're right up there. I
think they're the next state that's probably going to do something like this.
Wouldn't be surprising. I could say this now. So in Texas, of course, they give you the curriculum. They tell you this is what you should teach them this week, that week, this week. So I walked into the classroom and I looked at it and I said, and look at the books, because what a lot of people don't realize too, books are very biased. You have to look to see who wrote the book, right? And one thing I used to teach my students is to be able to disseminate facts from opinions. Right? Because you have people opinions, whether you're a conservative, whether you're liberal, whatever it may be, that seeps into the book, right? That you could tell where they're leaning. You read the book, you could tell the type of person or, where their values lie by reading their textbook. So
Absolutely.
I used to say, look at the facts. And when I went into the classroom down in Texas, I said, we're only going to use this for reference. And I tossed the book and I said, I'm going to teach you. And I said, I'm never going to tell you my opinion, no matter what. I'm always going to be devil's advocate towards you because I want you to formulate your own opinion. I'm just going to give you the facts to do so.
So, Brother Michael, what is this like for a teacher or an educator like Brian in the state of Florida? What is this effort put them? Because this puts them in a precarious position.
Absolutely. We've seen in a lot of these former Confederate states, Florida and Texas are two former Confederate states that seceded from the Union, took up arms to fight against the Union to maintain slavery. We see it in Oklahoma as well. There have been a number of especially former Confederate states to pass these anti-critical race theory bills, or however they want to frame them or name them. Now, the problem is that when you read them, they're very ambiguous. They're not clearly defined about what is not acceptable. And you have a lot of people saying, a lot of white people passing these laws saying, well, they don't, they're trying to ban things that make children feel bad or cause discomfort or things like this. Okay. Now, they're not banning World War I. They're not banning World War II. They're not banning George Washington, Thomas Jefferson. They're not banning white supremacists or like past presidents, things of this nature. Okay. But when it comes to African-American history, now we see a backlash because it's very hard to keep fooling a people when they know the truth. It's very hard to keep deceiving people when they understand history. And it's important not just for African-American children to understand this history, but for all children to understand this history, regardless of race. This is something Dr. Carter G. Woodson, who created Negro History Week in 1926 and co-founded Association for the Study of Negro Life and History in 1915. This is something he advocated because he had a PhD in American history from Harvard. Okay, and he said that school children across the country needed to learn this history. So once again, this is one of the reasons why I warned people about Governor Ron DeSantis in Florida. And I remember in 2018 when he ran against Andrew Gillum, and some simple Simon-ass black people on social media were saying they weren't going to vote for Andrew Gillum because he didn't have a black agenda. And I told them Ron DeSantis has a black agenda. He has an anti-black agenda. And an anti-black agenda is worse than not having a black agenda.
I gotta stop you right there, bro.
Go ahead.
just for the inches of time. But Brother Brian, we got like 30 seconds. I mean, for our people who are listening and watching this show, as an educator, been in the classroom, what would you encourage for parents and community members to do to resist this type of effort?
Let's start teaching our kids. Let's us start teaching them, because this is not for the current students now. This is going for the future generation, because now you don't teach it in the classroom. They grow up, they don't know anything that happened. And now they have a blank slate and they're like, they don't know their history. They did it to us already. Let's not let it continue. Let's teach our kids our history.
Brian Watkins checking in once again, giving us his insight and his latest thoughts about the situation down in Florida. Brian, again, brother, thank you so much for all that you do, man. We look forward to reconnecting with you soon.
Of course, definitely. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Brother Michael, we got 30 seconds. Go ahead with your, I know you got your programs, right?
Yeah, this weekend, Saturday and Sunday for the African History Network, January 21st, January 22nd, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. We have 2 free class sessions on Saturday, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa. Scroll down some. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. And then scroll back up to the first class. And then Sunday, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m., from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. We'll deal with the Harlem Hellfighters. Scroll back up to the first class. The Harlem Hellfighters will deal with World War I and the Red Summer of 1919, when you had over 25 major race riots in this country. Visit our website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com. You can register for these 2 free class sessions.
Absolutely. Brother Michael and Hotep, host of the African History Network podcast show. Thank you so much, Brother Michael. Truly appreciate
thanks,
it.
Raji.
Absolutely. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us. I thank each and every one of you. I thank my dynamic team. I want to first thank our very special guest, Brian Watkins. I want to thank Dr. Gerald Horn, Brother Michael and Hotep. I want to thank my team, King Keenan, Joel, my control room. And I certainly want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in. Make sure y'all do your due diligence. Go to Black Star Network. If you enjoyed the conversation today, make sure you support us financially. Make sure you support us with sharing the content once we go online and so much more. Just check out the website at blackstarnetwork.com. Again, the website is blackstarnetwork.com. And then follow us on all social media platforms. We're on IG at Black Star Network and on Twitter at Black Star Network as well. And while you're on social media, make sure you hit me up, The Real Faraji on IG, Faraji on Twitter. I love to connect with you as we continue to build out our online culture crew. Folks, that's going to do it for us. Thank you again for tuning in. Stay tuned. Up next is RMU, Roland Martin Unfiltered. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we'll reconnect with you tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Peace.